Hi, I'm Nick Salazar for TriRig.com. I'm here with Simon Smart, the legendary designer behind the Plasma 3, the brand new Plasma 5, Envy Smart System wheels, and I think going back as early as maybe the Giant Trinity.
Done your research,
was,
that's good, yeah.
Involved in...
It's amazing how many there are. Those bikes, I still see them here today.
You do?
In Kona, there's a lot around. Yeah, that was in 2007 we designed that bike.
Yeah, no kidding.
Still being raced now. It seemed like a long time ago.
Yeah, but so this is the latest and greatest.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the design of this bike, how it sort of compares and how it's evolved from the Plasma 3, and just sort of about the design of bikes and how that's going forward in general.
Okay.
I guess the first thing that I notice about the bike, just looking at the side profile, is some of the ways that it's similar and some of the ways that it's different from the Plasma 3.
Absolutely, yeah.
Obviously, all the tube shapes are different now. All the sort of harder lines that maybe were sort of aesthetic choices, perhaps, like on the head tube, where the Plasma 3 head tube cuts in a little bit and then goes down and cuts out.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think some of those same sorts of transitions in this area have all been sort of smoothed out. Could you talk about that a little bit and sort of how that evolved?
You're absolutely right. I suppose going from I inherited the project from, I didn't do the Plasma 2, so
right.
when we did the Plasma 3, it was completely like a whole new kind of silhouette. It was quite a different bike.
Right.
And you're absolutely right, we're very happy with the performance of the Plasma 3, and one of the key things was we wanted to just spend the time optimising the details rather than completely sort of changing the main architecture again, as you say. So that's really, but also at the same time it was driven by stiffness, and a lot of this sort of like the sort of bolder shapes around here was driven by improved composites and a much stiffer bike, more efficient bike. But yeah, it just shows you how the optimization is everything, because we made the gains we made in just those subtle changes of all the surfaces was bigger than the whole kind of architectural change between the Plasma 2 and the Plasma 3.
Got it.
So to the layman, you always sort of, in some ways, you look at them side on and you think it's not much of a move on, but it's all in the detail.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, one thing I've noticed from a lot of manufacturers just in the last couple of years is a lot of attention to detail right here, right behind the fork crown, and how the down tube, the rear of the fork crown, and the trailing edge of the front wheel come together, and really closing that space as much as possible. I think the first bike we saw that really did that to its greatest potential was like maybe the P4, the Cervelo P4,
absolutely, yeah.
where they dropped the down tube and did that. All Cervelo's bikes since then have done that, and a lot of bikes from other manufacturers are doing that same thing. Do you notice a significant change just in terms of that detail, or is that something you didn't look at sort of alone?
It's never one. There's never one big thing. It's just lots of.
Sure.
I mean, the issue with going too far down that direction is the stability of the bike can become an issue. Okay. So yeah, you can only go so. It's like everything is a compromise,
Yeah. Well, I mean, this bike definitely does hug that
absolutely
really well.
Yeah. We got away with it as much as we could, I think.
Got it. Yeah, and so sort of looking from a different direction, I mean, there are a lot of things we can talk about on this bike, and if we had 2 hours, I probably would, but another thing, so from the front of the bike, it's super, super clean, nothing that you can see sticking out, no cables, everything's hidden. Another detail that I'm seeing from a lot of different manufacturers is sort of changes in how the top of the fork crown looks and sort of its width compared to everything else. So you can get super narrow here or not so narrow or whatever, but we're seeing a little bit more width maybe
absolutely,
at the top of the fork crown.
You can, I mean, the stiffness is also giving you more clearance around the wheel for better flow from wheel aerodynamics as well. So it's definitely better to have a wider fork. And because you effectively have this deep sort of aspect ratio here, you can afford to go wider and have a bit more camber in the system.
Got it.
If anything, it can be better at higher yaw angles.
Okay.
So going wider, people always think, wider, it's more frontal area, but it's all about the shape as well. So in a crosswind, you can actually be wider and faster.
Got it. Yeah, and in this particular section, like you're saying, it's so deep.
So win-win. It's stiffer. It's better for the flow. The wheel, where we have the wheel rotating in the opposite direction. There's a lot of messy flow going on under there, so the more clearance you can have, the better.
Got it. Personally, I love how the bottle integrates with the frame. One question I sort of had is why it would need sort of several rubber pieces instead of having those as part of the bottle, so that you just put the bottle in and you don't have to deal with the rubber pieces. Because when I was playing with this bike at Interbike, that seemed to be a little bit of a challenge, sort of getting them all back in place when you want to put the bottle on. Was there a design reason not to make these rubber parts just part of the bottle?
To be honest, I was not involved in the final design of the product.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it was quite a challenge to obviously design it so you could have simply use this fairing underneath for the time trial bike.
Oh, okay.
So there was a challenge there, so that you can.
Right.
That's a common part of the brake cover, so you can go with the flat stem and remove the bottle.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point to make. That it's easy to criticize any particular design choice, but
No, that's interesting, and there's always scope for improvement in the future. But yeah, I mean, it was funny. That was exactly what we were aiming to do on the Giant Trinity back in 2007.
Oh,
so finally got it on there.
Nice.
Finally, and it works really well. I did a triathlon a few weeks ago, and you can fill up pretty quickly in the feed stations and dump the bottle in time. It's good.
Yeah,
it's a sweet solution.
Well, and funny that with the Trinity, the poor bike was then later declared UCI illegal because of that piece.
I know. Yeah.
So then they had to eliminate that whole part anyway. But
I think we were just sort of ahead of the time there. It was like we wanted all these integrated brakes and everything, and the manufacturing wasn't around.
Yeah. So when you're saying you don't have necessarily input on the final product as it's manufactured, so
that's right. I tend to design all the surfaces and obviously work with the engineers at Scott on determining the optimization of. Obviously, that's partly driven by what we're looking at structurally as well.
Right.
So you're iterating between FEA and CFD and the wind tunnel.
Right.
But the final design, I was not involved in that. That really has to involve the manufacturers of each part as well.
Right, yeah. So the engineers tell you what they would like, and then the manufacturers tell you what's possible or whatever.
So we ended up with it's very close, and we have a modular frame in the wind tunnel, which was used for the development, and you can line that up to this bike, and it's quite pleasing to see it hasn't changed too much at all.
Got it.
Which is great, because then you actually get the results in the final bike.
Yeah.
That you had in the wind tunnel test.
Right. Well, another question. Not sure if this is part of your purview or not, but a very different choice having the steerer clamp between two sections of the head tube rather than on top of it. Do you know anything about that?
Absolutely. I mean, that was a decision made very early on in the development. You talk about this shape around here, and so sort of you have to sort of put your stake in the sand and sort of choose some points. And one of the first things we determined was like the bearing sizes to achieve adequate stiffness or improve stiffness targets.
Okay.
So a key driver there was the position of those bearings with a much wider spread between them.
Okay.
And also the thinking behind that was so obviously you have a more favourable bending moment going through that.
Okay.
And then the other big thing is the top bearing goes, you've obviously got a straight line for all the carbon to run. So you win with that as well.
Got it.
Obviously, there is the downside is that this ends up being a slightly more complicated CNC part, but it works very nicely, and the bike is amazingly stiff to ride. You don't. I feel when you're doing on a rolling course and you have to climb, it's on a slow course it climbs as well as a road bike, so you get the best of both worlds in triathlon. I think it's perfect.
Yeah. So the bearings are here and here.
Absolutely. Yeah. So rather you imagine on a conventional bike, if you took the Plasma 3, the bearings would actually be down here, and then the stem would be on top. So there's quite a difference in distance for the reaction loads at the 2 points.
Yeah.
But then also you haven't got this convoluted path of the forces going like that, so that can make a significant difference.
Yeah. So, and then what I like is that So this is obviously a higher setup position-wise because this stem rises so much.
Yes, and then there's a flat version.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, the only disadvantage is then the flat version doesn't take advantage of the bottle.
No.
But it gets everything else in terms of the narrow.
And that's aimed more the time trial is where also you generally you can get away with a lower bar as well.
Right.
You know, you're not using it very much.
Yeah.
And, whereas it definitely helps having this higher on the climbs and on longer triathlon.
Well, and some of that will depend on rider geometry.
Absolutely,
I have really long monkey arms, so I'd be fine with the bars down here, but some people don't. So anything else that stuck out for you as a particularly interesting challenge or something that you think people don't notice about the design of this bike?
I think I'm very pleased with the flow around the rear end and and we did a lot of development in the wind tunnel with the pedaling rider.
Okay.
Because we want to be absolutely sure that the performance translated to the real world. And the flow. When we're looking at the details these days, the incremental gains from aerodynamics. It's not really valid anymore. I mean, 10 years ago it was kind of okay just to put a bike in the wind tunnel and you get a good result. But now we're all chasing very small gains that you want to be sure that the whole of the rear end is working whilst you're generating all this turbulence from the legs. So
is that where this very different shape came from on these chainstays?
Partly, absolutely, and again driven by stiffness and the flow from looking at the different sort of flow regimes you get with the leg position changes in CFD.
Okay.
And also the shape around here, we put quite a lot of work into that and actually made quite a good step to make it very, very clean and perform really well and give you much cleaner flow over the rear wheel.
Got it. Did you do any comparative tests versus some of the other more popular bikes that are out today, like the Felt IA or the Speed Concept or the P5?
Yes, we benchmarked a few other bikes and we're happy with the performance.
But that data hasn't been published?
No.
Okay, just curious.
Not as yet, I don't think, no.
Okay, got it. Well, Simon, thank you very much for your time.
It's a pleasure.
Beautiful.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah,
thank you.
My pleasure. So, for more info and photos,
some great results this weekend.
All right, you've got some great athletes on the bike.
Yeah. It's exciting.
For more info and photos, check out TriRig.com. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Cheers. Thanks.